How you and your business show up in the world can be a bit of a struggle to figure out.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking about positioning and a couple of strategies that you can use to help improve yours, which will ultimately help improve the marketing for your business.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started. All right, so let's talk about what people struggle with when it comes to positioning themselves in their business.
A lot of things.
Sorry, I made that too vague, apparently.
Really, the biggest thing, and I guess this is a general theme, is just not having enough clarity, and really, if you don't have clarity internally about what kind of business you want to build, who you want to be serving and how you want to be serving them, and then really how you want people looking at you and your business, it's then difficult to really do anything in your business, because if you don't know who you are, nobody else is going to know who you are. If you don't know what you stand for or how you're different, how are you going to expect any of your customers or anyone out in the marketplace that probably has a whole bunch of options to know, one, what you do, and then two, why they should choose you over someone else? And so this is something where it's very easy for businesses to get started and create a product and do all of these things and never actually take the time to think about, what do we want people to think when they hear our name, or when they see our logo, or when they come across one of our products? Like, how do we want them to feel? Like, for example, you look at companies that have done really well, and most of them are like bigger companies, the examples we use, right? But like something like Coca-Cola, when I say that, you've got a certain view in your head or a feeling. Or when I say BMW, right? There's a certain feeling that comes along with that. And that isn't by accident. That is curated because the company understands this is how we want to be positioned in our customer's mind, and this is how we want to be positioned against the competition. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses, we don't think enough about that. And as a result, as we go to grow, one of the things we struggle with is that we're not differentiating ourselves enough, and we're not really getting in the minds of our customers and being positioned the way that we would like to.
Well, and I think this has become a lot harder in recent years with the explosion of people starting online businesses, because, when you look at like small brick and mortar businesses, a lot of times they have less competition in one area. So you may only have like one or two people who are offering the same services or selling the same products in one town. Your positioning there, a lot easier. You're only competing against one or two other people.
Yep.
When you're in the online space, there are hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of other businesses that you are competing with. And it is all very noisy and very overwhelming for customers to find what they're looking for in that mess of people. So if you don't know what you stand for and you don't know how to stand out against all the other people that are doing what you do, it's very unlikely that your potential ideal customers are going to find you easily.
Absolutely. And, you make a great point, because when you're online, you're not just, restricted to a certain locale. And so it is difficult. Anytime things are difficult, it also presents a big opportunity, because if you can figure out how you stand out and how you're different than your competitors and different in a way that matters to your customers, that's going to put you leaps and bounds above everyone else that doesn't do this work. And so I want to first just really define what positioning is, because
yes, please do.
I think there's a lot of confusion that comes up when we talk about these like esoteric things like branding, positioning. It's almost like it's too fuzzy, and people all
vague.
have their own different definitions. So positioning is really just what you do in the mind of your prospect. What you do in the mind of your prospect. So it's important that, like, obviously you're in there, your brand, your company, your product, but it's less about you and less about what happens when your customer or potential customer comes in contact with you or sees you. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And by doing that, what you can then do is position yourself against the competition or to be the right company for the job. And this is what a lot of people like. One of my favorite activities to do with people when they're defining their avatar and trying to get clear on who they want to work with is having them come up with their top 3 competitors, or what I like to call existing alternatives, because it's less about competition, but it's like, if your product didn't exist, where else are these people going to go?
Yep.
And then when you go and look at that, one of the questions is that, okay, so people that don't have success with this, why is that? What's missing? And by diving into some of that, when you're then coming up with your company, your product, and how it's different in a way that matters, you can often look at those gaps and then intentionally position your product to solve that problem because it's not being solved by competition.
And when we talk about this stuff, one person sticks out in my brain that does this really, really well when he helps other businesses, Marcus Lemonis. Anytime, like, you watch his shows and he has the same process for taking people through this thing. Like, how do you position your company? He'll take people from where they were, look at who their customer base is. He looks at their story, at their brand, at what their company does, how their company does it differently. And he always pulls that out to raise that company's positioning up in the minds of its potential customers.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because he, like, when he first comes into a business, he does essentially an audit. And, it's the same thing that we do. On a side note, it's funny that people often compare us to Marcus
Not me,
Lemonis,
you.
which I will take any day, because, that's a really good compliment.
Short, bald guy helping businesses.
Yeah. Well, and so to that point, he kind of does an audit of everything, and then he looks for what's different. What is the key piece here that isn't being pulled out? And oftentimes it is with the story. And that's why, you should understand your why, but oftentimes you're not incorporating your why enough into the business and why it exists. Like, one of the questions I always like to ask people, like I did it on one of our coaching calls yesterday for the incubator, was like, why this business? And if someone doesn't have a really clear reason for that, it's probably not the right business, or they haven't dove deep enough to understand. Because a lot of times, and actually this happened at our live mastermind that we did last year, somebody wants to start a business because it's a good idea or they think they'll make money. But unless there's a deeper why, one, you're not going to be able to persist through. But the hidden thing that a lot of people don't realize is you're not going to be able to stand out because you're just in it to make money. You're not truly in it for a bigger purpose that's going to separate you from everybody else out there. So understanding the why isn't just important so that you actually stick with your business. It's also important in your positioning.
Yeah. A lot of times you yourself are important in your positioning as well. A lot of us are small business owners or solo entrepreneurs, and parts of your story can be important in your positioning for your brand. And, oftentimes a lot of people will talk about, oh, well, I don't have a personal brand, so I feel like my story shouldn't be in there. You grew your company. You built the business. So even though you feel like your story isn't relevant or maybe isn't important, it is, because that's how your customers are going to connect with you and your company, because the owner of the company is getting open and vulnerable and sharing parts of their story. Like, people want to do business with a person. They don't want to do business with this big corporate company. They like when they can relate to the person who has created the product or service that they're interested in buying.
Yeah, well, so Simon Sinek has a book called Start With Why. And that's really the whole reason, because when you have the why behind the company, everything else blossoms from there. And a lot of times, when you're on sales calls or when you're talking to people, explaining why the company exists helps you articulate the problem that wasn't being solved that your company does. And so oftentimes, by simply telling the story, what you get people to realize is, oh yeah, that is the problem. Hey, that is the problem I have. And you guys created this company because you saw that this wasn't being solved, which was part of my experience. Yeah, I'm interested. Tell me more about this solution or how you guys help in a way that's different. Because if I've tried working with the competition and I had the same experience of why you started the company, that now makes a very easy transition into selling your product or service.
It gives your it's telling them your purpose,
Yep.
which, you know, a lot of people look at big corporations and they see like the company mission statement, and it's all very professional and very, you know, clean and kind of stark a lot of times.
All the buzzwords.
All the buzzwords that you what was it? We posted, I feel like I posted this somewhere from the Michael Scott Paper Company. He had like posted his company mission statement, and it was like the most vague, non-committal statement ever.
And it could apply to any company.
And it could have applied to any company.
Mhm.
So really walking through some of this stuff in your business, like what are your company's core values? What would your company mission statement be if you were to type it out and incorporate those core values?
Yeah, well, and to that point on the mission statement, this is another one of those things where people are like, oh, it's so like
It's corporate-y and
esoteric and I don't know what to put, so I'm just going to put all these words that sound good. The mission statement should really be focused on the customer
Mhm.
and solving that problem that they really have. You know, so all of this, even all this positioning, it starts with you, but it should all be focused on the customer. Because when you have clarity on who you are, what your brand is, why it exists, and then you turn that around and share that out to the customer in a way that serves and helps them on their journey, that's what then allows them to say, this is the right product or service for me, and I'm going to go work with them. And this is why, like, taking that time to understand, like, what is the brand promise that you have for your customers? Who are the competition, so that you can then say, here's how we're different,
Mhm.
and here's how we're different in a way that matters to you. And then to your point, pulling that all together to then say, this is who we are, this is why we exist, and this is how we can help you.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, this is difficult. And I'll be the first to admit, this took us a while
Very long
to
time.
get right, especially with this business.
We went through like 3 different iterations.
Yeah. And you know, like, to be honest, part of it was because we didn't take the time to think about these things.
Mhm.
We're like, oh, that's stuff that comes later when your company gets bigger.
We made all the mistakes we're telling you not to make.
Absolutely. And it's like, no, you're going to start. It'll evolve over time. But you really want to start taking some time and answering these questions, because then it'll allow you to shift that into everything else that you do. It'll shift into how you run the business. It'll shift into who you hire and the culture that you have. It'll shift into then how you do your marketing campaigns and the words you use and everything else. And that's why when we start working with people, I have them think less about branding, because immediately people go to, oh, my logo and my colors and blah, blah, blah.
My name.
And I like to have them first start with positioning,
Mhm.
because when you get the positioning down,
It's easier.
and
to
now
come
you
up
go to
the
work with
name
somebody,
and the logo.
yeah, and now when you go to work with somebody that's helping you with branding, that positioning is like all the pre-work they need to really develop a good brand for you.
Mhm. I was just thinking about, so let's use ours as an example. Why not? When we came up with our first brand, when we came into this online space, we got it completely backwards, and our positioning was about us.
Yep.
We named our brand Entreprenewlyweds because we were newly married
And we were
and we were
entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs.
And by the way,
Just squished them together.
hardest name to say, you know,
And
surprisingly, the domain was available.
I wonder why. So, you know, as we were working with that brand and nothing was really happening and people were confused, like, wait, is this only for newlyweds? I don't know if this is
How do you
for
spell
me.
that again?
What do you guys do? Who are you serving? So we figured out, okay, well, obviously we need to change this brand. This is not how we want people to see us. So the next brand we picked was more about our potential customers. We did shift it up a little bit. Still, we didn't have our messaging down. We didn't have our purpose, our mission, our core values, none of that stuff.
Well,
We came up with serial startups.
Well, and here's like the truth. You know, I'm not the creative one. So I think you had said that name, or we were trying to come up with a new name. And then the mistake I made and the lesson I learned from that one was I liked the name. And so we built everything else
We tried to fit it around there.
the name, rather than really building it around the mission and why we were doing this and who we
Mhm.
wanted to help, and building it that way. So we almost, because we picked the wrong name and we started with the name rather than the mission, we built the wrong type of company.
Yep.
And was attracting the wrong types of people.
Correct.
At which point,
We then
you-
figured out
well,
there
you were
needed-
not feeling aligned with that.
I was not aligned
And-
at all with that brand.
And, you know, and that was such a good thing, because you're like, I just don't, this isn't what I care about or who I want to be working with. And then it was like back to the drawing board again to where we finally nailed it.
We started to nail it. And this was what I think this is what you're talking about. We're like not being worried about the name or your brand when you're just getting started and figuring things out. Because what we came up with was we wanted to connect with more people like us, people that had businesses or were trying to start businesses, but also had a spouse and or a family. Mm-hmm. So we rebranded our Facebook group, and it was kind of a little test of, hey, is this really something people are wanting? We named it the Family Entrepreneur Life Community. So that went over really well. Yep. We started to attract a lot of people. They loved the message, but we weren't connecting yet with what the problems people were having and how to solve them.
The ultimate outcome.
And the ultimate outcome. So that group allowed us to do a little bit more of that market research and connect with those people we knew we wanted to connect with. We just weren't quite sure what it was they were looking for, which is how this new brand was ultimately born. We wanted to put out a new product that was going to help those people. So we did a lot of market research within that group, and we came upon this name that I don't even remember how it happened.
Actually,
you came up with the name
with
this
it.
time.
Yeah.
And like you said it, and it was just kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense with what we're trying to do and what we're all about. So then it built off of that. We went and did our manifesto. We talked about what our core values were. We came out with a company mission and a brand promise that now we've been able to build upon all of that, as opposed to how we tried to do it those other ways.
And the thing, at least in my mind, that helped me get there was I took a step back, because when you're not creative and you're trying to come up with this stuff, it is tough. So I took a step back and I'm like, why are we doing all this? Like, why do we start these businesses? Why are we even doing this? Why do we want to help people now? And I was like, it's to build your ideal life. Like, that's what everyone wants. It's financial freedoms, financial independence. It's all that stuff. And so lifestyle. So we switched around in lifestyle builders, and I was like, that's it. And then the more we talked, like even our tagline, your life, your business, your way. A lot of that came from us sitting down and saying, like, what do we stand for and what do we like in the marketplace, and what do we not like? And I remember we were actually sitting in the parking lot waiting to go talk to our accountant, and you were just on like an epic rant about all the stuff that was wrong with the industry. And I'm like, wait, let's write that down. And so we started writing that down. And if you guys are watching the video, you guys can see them. Part of the manifesto is actually on our office right behind us. If you're not watching the video, you guys can check that out at our website, tomandariana.com. But what that really did was helped take and really make our positioning front and center.
Yep.
This is who we are. This is how we help them. This is why.
Yep. This is who we serve and why.
And from that, then, because one of the pieces of feedback that we got when we just couldn't get things connected was a lot of people were like, I love you guys, but I don't know what you do.
Yeah, it's the worst thing to hear.
And I'll tell you, as a business owner, it's a big struggle when you talk to somebody and you can help them, and they don't go with you, but they ultimately go with somebody else who's exactly against what you're trying to do. And that's not the right fit for them, but you couldn't articulate enough of what you do and why you're the right fit. And so for us, really getting this manifesto solid then made it easier to, do everything else. It made it easier to figure out what our products and services were. It made it easier to figure out our marketing campaigns and some of the messaging and everything else around that, because we got super clear on who we were, who we wanted to help, and how we wanted to be positioned.
Yeah. And I mean, this didn't all happen in a day. It wasn't built in a day. This took a while.
3 days.
This took months for us. Like, okay, we're on the right track. What are the next steps? We're on the right track. What are the next steps? So it was constantly going back and getting clearer and diving deeper into all of this stuff. What is it? Why do we serve these people we serve? What do we do exactly? And you're going to find that as you get into this, you're going to constantly be up-leveling and evolving because you're never going to sit still. Like that's not what business is. It's not what entrepreneurship is. So once you get that track and you know that you're on the right one, don't be afraid to say, oh, well, we tried that. That didn't work. Let's go this new direction, because a lot of times you are going to have historical experience that you're bringing with you. Like, oh, well, we always wanted to do this thing. Let's try it. Didn't work. Let's try a different thing. Like, obviously we know we're on the right track. Now it's time to start testing out and figuring out where we ultimately are going to end up with that.
Yeah. And so let me give you guys some examples of how when you get these different pieces together, you can pull it together into a positioning statement that's concise. So we've talked before about your ideal customer avatar. You want to understand them. We talked about your product or your company. We talked about the key benefits that you offer people, like getting to their results, and then who your existing alternatives are. So this is just an example for one of our products and how it's positioned. So to people seeking financial freedom and time freedom, that's our ideal customer avatar. That's what they're seeking. Our product, the Lifestyle Builders Incubator, is the mentorship program that provides step-by-step guidance and support. That's the key customer benefit. That's the key thing that they get is step-by-step training and support for those people trying to build a financial freedom through a business. Unlike, and this is where we go against the competitors or the existing alternatives. So unlike information online that is confusing and oftentimes contradicting. It's one of the biggest challenges is people get online, they look for information. It's like, well, this source said this and this source said that. What do I do? They get caught in analysis paralysis. Two, unlike training courses that don't offer access to the mentor or the community.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of training courses out there, and we polled a lot of our members and a lot of our customers, and they said that was one of the biggest things that set you guys apart was you're not just selling us a course and then we have to do it on our own. We're actually getting guidance from you when we get stuck. So that was a big selling point. And then third, unlike, quote unquote coaching or mentors that make the coach financially free, but don't ultimately help the client succeed. And that was the other thing that we heard is that you guys are actually there. You guys actually care about our success and want us to win as well. Yeah. So when you truly get in and understand it, you can put a statement like that together that truly summarizes on one page or in one sentence who you are, who you stand for, how you help, and how you're different. And when you can do that, now your marketing and everything else becomes so much easier.
Yeah. I can't remember what company it was, but I remember you showed me one time their website and then you went to their About Us page and they had gone through their mission statement and their purpose. And it was just so well done. It was funny. It was witty. They took funny cracks at other companies or, products out there, but they did it in a way that was endearing to their company.
Yeah.
And I wish I remember what company it was so that I could call out their website, but that's what you want. You want people to come to you and find your statement to the world and be nodding their head and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, these are the people, or this is the brand that I need to be working with. Let me figure out how I can do that.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what this is all about, is then shifting it back to your customer. Because when you find when the right people find you, you want them to instantly know that, yes, I need to learn more and I need to get more engaged because this is the company or this is the product that I'm really interested in. And that then starts them down the path of your customer journey of where then everything else you have nurtures them towards that. So even, for example, when you're now trying to make a marketing campaign, when you have this positioning in place, laying out what are the elements of that campaign and what pieces are we going to put in place to nurture somebody towards being able to become a customer, all of that now becomes easier when you've got this stuff clear. And on the flip side, for your customer, it becomes much easier. And this is when you really are looking at that customer experience. And we've all probably had a lot of bad examples, but we probably had a couple good examples of where you just had a really good experience with a company. From the first time you saw them, you're like, that's the company I need to work with. Every step along the way, they really nurtured and supported you, answered your questions, gave you everything you needed to make a decision, let you make a purchase. You had a really good experience. You love the product or service. You got the results you're looking for. And all of that really starts with your positioning. But what it ends up with is you really making a really good experience for the customers, which then comes back and ultimately helps you grow your business and become a lot more successful.
Yeah. Well, and the one big piece too is like when you've defined your positioning, what your brand promise is, all of that stuff, it actually helps you as a business owner have more of like a guiding star when it comes to making decisions in your business and how you show up in the world. So, I know a lot of people get into social media online and they're like, oh, well, do we post funny stuff? Do we post stuff? Does it have to sound professional? They get really confused with how they're going to show up in those social media platforms. And when they hire people onto their team, it's hard to convey what they want their business to show up on those social media channels or on podcasts or on videos. When you have this stuff down, so easy. Yep. You automatically know, here's the things that we stand for. Here's the things that we don't. You're giving people that guidance on, okay, here's how we're going to show up when people respond with negative feedback. Here's how we're going to show up when something awesome happens and we want to share it out there without tooting our own horn too much. Here's how we show up when we support other brands. Like, it just gives you all of that information and allows you to also share it with your team so that your company is always showing up the way that you want it to be, and you're always having it in your customers' minds the way you want them to see you.
That is such a great point.
The second thing that I wanted to say, I just want to call out a brand that I know does this really, really well. We are new customers of theirs, but I've always wanted to be a customer of theirs. And now that I am, I love them even more. You guys probably have heard of them. If you haven't, go check them out. Aaron and Mike Kelly over at Member Vault do this really, really well. And I think there's a lot of, like we talked about, there's a lot of bigger companies that do this well. But now and more, you're starting to see some of these small business owners and, entrepreneur teams that are starting to show up and make a stamp on the business world. And I absolutely love it. And I'm very happy to support them while doing it. Mm-hmm. So just had to give a little shout out.
There you go. And so, once again, this is an episode where it can be really high level. So I want to leave you guys with some questions you can ask as you're going through and doing this. So I'm just going to kind of rifle through these, take a listen back, and then really take some time and think about this. So first question, why do we build this? Next up, what do we stand for and against? Like, one of my favorite activities is having people make that list.
Yep.
And then it becomes so much easier. Even one of the things we talk about is like being polarizing. Some people try to be polarizing for the sake of fact of being polarizing. What you want to do is you want to be polarizing against the things you don't stand for and for the things you do, so that you'll be attracting the people that
so that it makes sense when you're posting up polarizing things. It's coming back to your brand. And hey, the reason we're posting this is because we are vehemently against this.
Yep. How do we want to be perceived? So even just thinking about what words or what thoughts or what reactions do we want people to have in those interactions? What does the customer have to deal with if our product isn't there? That really helps you figure out the gap that you're solving. How do we close the gap on our competitor's weakness? If your competitor is solving one problem but not another, talking about how you close that gap. And then, the final question is, what are we the first at? Were we the first company to do this? What are we the best at? Or what are we the only one that does? And so if you go through, you don't have to answer all those questions, but the more that you can get answers to those, the more you're going to understand how you want to be positioned and pull it together into what we talked about earlier.
I like those very practical questions.
Yeah, they are.
Now we're giving people lots of actions to take away because we have more. We have specific actions that we want to give you guys after listening to this episode as well. Mm-hmm. All right. So what I want you guys to do is kind of like those questions Tom just asked you, but just pick one. What's one way you position your business that makes you stand out?
Yeah. And on that similar note, go and actually find your existing customers and then people that maybe aren't customers yet.
Good idea.
And just ask them, hey, what comes to mind when you think about this product or when you hear our company's name, and get some real insights on what they're perceiving and if that aligns with what you want them to be perceiving.
I like that.
And so actually we have a bookshelf today.
You have a book today.
Yes. So
very, very relevant book.
It's actually called Positioning, since we're talking about positioning. But this is a classic book. So I don't even know what year it came out, like in the 70s, but this is like the go-to book really around this. And a lot of the examples are dated back then, but all the principles in here are timeless. And, the first time I read this through, I actually had to like reread some of these pages a couple times. And it was just so insightful on how this really is the core and the start of your marketing. And before that, I hadn't really paid much attention because to me, branding and positioning and all that stuff just seemed very like esoteric, and not that it made a difference. And what I saw was that this, when you really understand it, then sets the basis for everything else. So if you guys want to learn more about this, that's a great book. What I also want to do is, if you guys want more support in creating this and crafting this for your business, as you go to start scaling, I really invite you guys to come join our Lifestyle Builders Incubator.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of that stuff in there.
Yeah, and this is the key part of, as we, have you either develop or kind of retake a look at your products and services. And if you're going to be launching something new, really taking time to think about how do you want it to be positioned and help you get that craft and honed in so that you can go out and make more sales. So if you guys are interested in learning more and getting support and guidance on putting this together, you guys can check that out at joinlifestylebuilders.com. I
feel like you had a word of the day today because you definitely said it like 3 times. Esoteric.
I did.
Oh man, I just had to call that out. We don't have a word of the day calendar around here, but I feel like we totally did for this episode.
That would totally be it.
All right, you guys, it's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, I want you guys to remember that it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.